Umar ibn Al-Khattab was one of the most powerful and influential companions of the Prophet Muhammad. Known for his strength, leadership, and justice, he was the second caliph of Islam. Before accepting Islam, Umar was a fierce opponent of Muslims. However, once Islam entered his heart, he became one of its staunchest defenders. His life was marked by constant fear of Allah and dedication to justice. Despite being known for his strength and boldness, his heart was soft before the words of Allah. This balance between power and humility made him one of the greatest men in Islamic history. His deep understanding and fear of accountability in the hereafter often led him to tears during prayers. His sincerity was so intense that it became a model of true leadership for the Ummah. In this story, we explore an incident where a verse of the Qur'an had such a profound impact on him that it left him ill. This incident shows us that no matter how high one's status is, the fear of Allah and the reminder of the hereafter can humble even the strongest souls. As Caliph, Umar ibn Al-Khattab took personal responsibility for the well-being of the people under his rule. He was known for walking the streets of Medina at night, disguised and alone, to check if any of his people were hungry, sick, or in distress. He didn't rely solely on messengers or reports, he wanted to see things with his own eyes. These nightly patrols revealed his humility and deep sense of accountability before Allah. On many occasions, he would discover families in need and silently help them without revealing his identity. He considered his role not just political, but spiritual, to serve the people sincerely. Umar feared that if even one animal went hungry under his leadership, he would be questioned by Allah. This level of taqwa, God consciousness, made his heart sensitive to every reminder of the afterlife. It was during one of these spiritually active phases that an event occurred during Fajr prayer. A verse from the Qur'an was recited that moved him so deeply that he fell ill. His nightly patrols weren't just acts of leadership, they were preparation for the day when no soul will bear the burden of another. Umar ibn Al-Khattab was consistent in performing every salah in the masjid, especially Fajr, despite his responsibilities as a caliph. He understood the value of praying in congregation and the tranquility that came with starting the day in the remembrance of Allah. On one such morning, he stood behind the Imam for Fajr, surrounded by the early worshippers of Medina. The atmosphere was peaceful, the city still silent, the sun yet to rise. The Qur'an was being recited, and the hearts of the believers stood alert, absorbing every word. As the Imam recited from Surah At-Tur, Umar's focus was sharpened. He wasn't just hearing the verses, he was feeling them. His heart was engaged fully, his mind reflecting deeply. This moment wasn't just a routine prayer, it became a turning point. It reminds us of the spiritual power of Fajr Salah, a time when the soul is most receptive, and the connection with Allah is strongest. Umar's intense concentration and spiritual openness in this prayer is what allowed the coming verse to pierce his heart. Sometimes, it takes a quiet moment with the Qur'an to awaken something deep within us. During that Fajr prayer, the Imam began reciting from Surah At-Tur, a chapter of the Qur'an filled with descriptions of both paradise and the terrifying realities of hellfire. The surah begins with powerful oaths and quickly shifts to scenes from the Day of Judgment. As the Imam continued, Umar listened closely. The words were not just being recited, they were entering his soul. It wasn't just about the beauty of the language, it was the weight of its meaning. The companions of the Prophet always had a heightened awareness of the afterlife. For them, the Qur'an wasn't a book to be merely recited, it was a direct message from their Lord. As the recitation approached verse 7 and 8, the tone became more severe. These verses spoke of the punishment of Allah as a certain reality that no one could stop. For Umar who already feared his accountability before Allah, these words hit deep. They triggered a reflection on his own deeds, his responsibilities, and the immense weight of the hereafter. This shows how deeply the early Muslims connected with the Qur'an. Every verse was like a mirror to their soul. The verse that struck Umar was, "Indeed, the punishment of your Lord will occur. There is none to avert it." Surah At-Tur 7-8. These words are not long, yet they carry a weight that can shatter the hardest of hearts. The verse is a firm declaration: the punishment of Allah is not a matter of if, but when. And once it comes, no one can stop it. For Umar, this wasn't just a warning about others, it was a warning to himself. Despite being a caliph, a companion of the Prophet, and one promised paradise, he never considered himself safe from the wrath of Allah. That verse reflected his deep sense of responsibility and fear of falling short. His heart trembled because he knew the reality behind those words. He didn't see status or position as protection. He saw accountability. This verse reminded him that leadership is not power, it's a trust. And if that trust is broken, punishment awaits. This response teaches us how to approach the Qur'an, not just with our tongues, but with our hearts. The message is personal, urgent, and eternal. Like Umar, we should ask, what if this verse is about me? As soon as the Imam recited the verse, a visible change came over Umar ibn Al-Khattab. The one known for his strength in battle and firmness in justice began to tremble. The companions nearby noticed his reaction. His face paled, his eyes filled with tears, and soon, the mighty Umar could no longer stand upright. He wept so deeply that his sobs could be heard in the masjid. For Umar this was not just a moment of emotion, it was an awakening. That single verse had peeled away all worldly distractions and placed him directly before the court of Allah in his mind. The fear of failing his duties, of being held accountable for the people he ruled over, and of not being good enough for Jannah, all of it overwhelmed his heart. This moment shows us how deeply the companions connected with the Qur'an. They didn't wait for the day of judgment to cry over their sins. They cried in this world so that they may smile in the next. Umar's tears were not from weakness, they were from faith, sincerity, and the weight of his responsibility before Allah. The effect of that verse wasn't temporary. Umar ibn Al-Khattab became physically unwell after the prayer. He fell ill and remained bedridden for several days. The companions came to check on him, concerned about his sudden illness. But the reason wasn't a fever or infection, it was the fear of Allah. His heart had been shaken by that verse to the point where his body responded. This wasn't the first time Umar had been affected so deeply by the Qur'an. There were other instances when a single verse would cause him to weep for days. But this one made him so fearful that his health was impacted. He told those around him that the verse made him feel as if the punishment of Allah was coming directly for him, and he wasn't ready. This extreme level of self-accountability is a powerful lesson for us. Despite being among the most righteous, Umar never saw himself as guaranteed paradise. He always feared Allah's judgment. Today, many feel secure in their actions while committing major sins. Umar teaches us that true iman, faith, brings both hope and fear, and both are signs of a sincere heart. The companions of the Prophet who witnessed Umar's reaction and illness became deeply concerned. They visited him, asking if he was physically unwell or needed treatment. Some even feared his time had come. Umar, however, kept repeating the same thing, that verse has broken me. His companions knew that Umar was not the type to fall ill easily. His physical and mental strength was unmatched. Yet here he was, bedridden not from a wound or battle, but from a verse of the Qur'an. The companions were reminded of how serious the Qur'an is and how the early believers truly lived it. They didn't just memorize or recite it, they internalized it. When it spoke about punishment, they feared it. When it mentioned mercy, they hoped for it. Their reactions were not just emotional, but spiritual transformations. The concern of the companions also shows the close bond they shared. They cared deeply for each other's faith and well-being. Today, if we saw a friend weeping over a verse of the Qur'an, would we comfort them or simply ignore it? The companions saw these moments as signs of a heart that is alive with faith. When people came to Umar ibn Al-Khattab during his illness and asked what had happened, he would simply say, "This verse has broken me." It was a confession of vulnerability, a glimpse into the spiritual depth of a man who led an entire empire. These words show how seriously he took every reminder from Allah. He didn't make excuses or downplay his emotions. He openly admitted that a single verse had shaken him to the core. For Umar, the Qur'an wasn't a book of stories, it was a direct message from his Lord, and each verse was personal. When he said the verse broke him, he meant that it humbled him, exposed his weaknesses, and reminded him of the eternal consequences of leadership. Despite his outward power, he felt fragile before Allah's warning. This phrase is something we all need to reflect on. When was the last time a verse of the Qur'an made us pause, cry, or change our lives? Do we allow the Qur'an to break our arrogance, our sins, or our heedlessness? Umar's brokenness was not despair, it was a sign of true submission to Allah. This entire incident leaves us with a powerful and timeless lesson. Even the strongest, most righteous hearts can and should tremble before the words of Allah. Umar ibn Al-Khattab was not an ordinary man. He was a warrior, a caliph, a companion promised paradise. Yet a single verse made him weep, fall ill, and reflect deeply on his life and responsibilities. If a heart like his can be broken by the Qur'an, what about ours? Today, many of us read the Qur'an without feeling its weight. We recite it quickly, sometimes without understanding. But the companions treated every verse as a divine letter from their Creator. They allowed it to change them. The Qur'an is not just for barakah, blessing, it is for transformation. Umar's story teaches us that real strength is not in hiding our emotions, it's in letting Allah's words reach us. His tears weren't signs of weakness, but signs of iman. Let's ask ourselves, when was the last time a verse made us stop, cry, or reflect? If our hearts have become hard, maybe it's time to return to the Qur'an the way Umar did, with sincerity, fear, and love.